Kakoi put kunye. Kakoi put kunye. Kakoi put kunye. Kakoi.
Are you speaking Russian?
I am. I'm learning to speak Russian because astronauts during training learn Russian, and I'm going to apply to be an astronaut.
Again?
Third time's a charm.
Well, what else do you have to know?
Astronauts do all kinds of training. They train underwater in the neutral buoyancy lab. They learn to fly airplanes. They do virtual reality.
Whoa. This seems like a lot.
There is a lot. Do you have a little bit of time?
I got about 30 minutes.
This is STEM in 30. You know, in Russian, it's not easy to say. Yestesvednanya to I technika 30 minut.
You're going to need a little more work.
STEM in 30.
Hi, I'm Beth.
And I'm Marty.
And we are coming to you live from the Moving Beyond Earth Gallery at the Smithsonian Institution's National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C.
We've got some friends with us from Ripon Middle School. Welcome, guys.
They've got some great questions lined up. We'll take them during the show, but we want to remind those of you watching online that you too can submit questions.
Head over to Facebook Live and go down to the comments section. Put your question in there. Anything and everything that you've ever wanted to know about training to become an astronaut is fair game.
Now, training to become an astronaut is both complicated and intense. And today we're going to look at the 3 stages of astronaut training.
The first stage starts right now, even when you're in middle school, before you ever apply to become an astronaut.
The second stage is basic astronaut training.
And after that comes the training once you're assigned to a mission.
Of course, a critical component of all of this training is teamwork.
We have some friends doing a teamwork challenge called Breakout EDU. Have you ever heard of or participated in an escape room? Breakout EDU is like that, only your job is to break in. Students use teamwork and critical thinking skills to solve a series of puzzles to open a locked box. If students get stuck, they can ask for a hint, but they only get 2. Who knows what they will find inside?
Okay, so I've got some friends here and they are working on their Breakout EDU. Have you guys needed any hints yet?
Yes. NASA astronaut Kjell Lindgren played the bagpipe while he was in space. How many drones did the bagpipe have?
How many drones did the bagpipe have? That is a question I'm afraid I don't know the answer to, but we have... We happen to have NASA astronaut Kjell Lindgren here, and he will help you with these questions. Kjell, how many drones did your bagpipe have?
The Great Highland Bagpipe has 3 drones.
Okay, so, and you played this while you were on the International
That's
Space
right,
Station.
I did.
What did your crew think of that?
Well, they were incredibly gracious. In fact, Scott Kelly mentioned that he grew up in New Jersey and has fond memories of listening to the fire department playing their bagpipes in parades. And so as I practiced on the space station, both he and Kimya very generously said that they enjoyed listening to me play.
Is it hard to play in?
So it's hard to play the bagpipes even here on the Earth. I would say that the major difference is just keeping your body in one place. So I had to hook my feet underneath our handrails. So you can see the tassels floating around, which is pretty cool. But the air pressure in the space station, our atmospheric pressure, is the same as it is at sea level. And that would have the most significant effect on the actual playing of the instrument. And so in comparison, it was about the same.
Do we have more hints we need to go through?
Yes. Kjell has done the blank spacewalk.
How many spacewalks have
I
you
got to
done?
do 2 spacewalks during my expedition.
You want to tell us a little bit about how those went?
Sure. I mean, it is absolutely amazing to put that big white spacesuit on and to go outside, to see the outside of the space station, which is this incredible structure that we've built as an international partnership, to see that outside, and then to be able to see the Earth from that perspective is also amazing.
Do we have more for this block?
Yes. This year, Kjell became an astronaut. the number of space flights has been done on.
Okay, so let's see.
It's the last
The year
digit.
that I became an astronaut in 2009, so the last digit is 9. And then I have been on one space flight. It was a long one, but only one. And so 9 minus 1 is math in public. Good job. All right.
Why don't you take out the box and start working on that number log now that you've got all of the numbers? Now, training to be an astronaut just isn't physical training. You also have to have a good education. And recently we talked to a number of astronauts about their educational background. Let's take a look.
So my educational background is that I went to the University of Washington and I did an undergrad degree in zoology, which is actually a kind of a marine zoology, looking at life in the ocean.
After I graduated from high school in northern Wisconsin, I went off to the military academy at West Point.
I spent 4 years at West Point.
To college at the United States Military Academy at West Point.
I majored in physics and electrical engineering as an undergraduate at North Carolina State University, and then I went on to get a master's degree in electrical engineering.
Further in my military career, I had the chance to go to graduate school at Georgia Tech, where I studied operations research in the systems engineering department.
I graduated from Ontario High School in Ontario, California, and I went from there to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I went to Cal Poly on a wrestling scholarship and wrestled and played football there for a couple of years, and I graduated with a degree in general engineering.
I started out as a math major at UCLA, switched over to being a chemistry major, graduated with a BS in chemistry, went on to medical school, got my degree in medicine, and also had spent a year in graduate school so that I have my master's in chemistry as well.
While I was in college, I was in the United States Marine Corps Reserve. I studied geologist, so I worked as a hydrogeologist for a while.
I went to UC San Diego for undergraduate, and then I got my PhD at Stanford Medical School, and we were studying viruses, how the virus interacts with the immune system.
Chell, thanks so much for being here today.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Now, we talked about that training before you get selected. Let's talk a little bit about the training after you're selected, and we just chose a new class, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And we're so excited to have the class of 2017 join us in the astronaut office. Now, 18,000 people applied for a job to come work with us at NASA as astronauts. And we selected 12 Americans, and the Canadian Space Agency selected 2 additional astronaut candidates. So we have 14 people in this new class training with us. And it's pretty spectacular. It was one of my favorite parts of becoming an astronaut was going through the training and all the different disciplines that we're expected to learn. The space station systems, robotic arm operations, how to do a spacewalk, flying in the T-38 jet, and learning the Russian language.
Wow. What's it like when you first get that phone call?
That's an amazing thing. I mean, it really is a dream come true. It was a dream come true for me. I was working at NASA at the time. I was a flight surgeon, a physician that cares for the crew, for the astronauts, and actually living and working in Star City, Russia, supporting the crew that were in training out there at the time. And so to get that call is actually from Peggy Whitson, who is the chair of that astronaut selection board. That was an amazing event in my life.
So once you report to Houston, then what do you start doing?
Well, and that's great. That's the real fun of being an astronaut candidate, is learning all of these different skills that you need, so that at the end you are essentially, you graduate, you become an active astronaut, and now you can be assigned to a mission, because you have to have all of these very basic skills in order to learn the more advanced skills for your actual mission. Was there a hardest part of training for you? Yeah, I think that there are a couple of things. One is that you are really expected to become, to master all these different skills. And so it's whether it's the Russian language or learning how to fly in the aircraft or using the robotic arm. Those are very different skills, and so becoming good at each of those is very difficult. And then for me personally, becoming conversant in the Russian language was a challenge. It's not easy, I found out. It's not easy, but you did a great job.
Thank you. Did you have a favorite part?
You know, my favorite part of working at NASA, both as a physician and as an astronaut, is really the people. We attract the best and brightest that the country has to offer, and to be a part of that team, all these amazing people that are so experts in all these different fields, to have them investing time in us to help us get trained and prepared for our missions is unbelievable.
So after you're selected, before you get assigned, how long does that take?
From the time that you get selected to the time you get assigned, it really depends. We have a class of about, my class is 14, and we were selected in 09, so 8-9 years ago, and we still have people flying on their first flights. We have a couple of folks that are in training and getting ready to fly, and so it takes some time because our space station missions are long and fairly infrequent, so we only really fly about 4 to 5 Americans a year.
Worth it?
Oh, it's absolutely worth it. It's unbelievable.
You ready to take a few questions?
Yeah, that would be great.
All right, let's start with a video question.
I'm Emily, and what's it like to walk on to spacewalk?
Emily, that's a great question. Doing a spacewalk, in fact, 2 during my mission, was really one of the highlights of that whole experience. And so putting on that white spacesuit, opening the hatch and seeing the Earth below, just rotating quickly below you, going outside and with your own eyes seeing this incredible structure that our partnership has built, doing repairs, doing real work out there, doing repairs and installing equipment to sustain the life of the space station, and then getting back inside safely. It's a phenomenal experience.
All right, we've got an online question next. How has astronaut training changed from the early days?
It's a really interesting question. I think, of course, we have similar training to what we did in the past. We all have to know how to respond to emergencies in the spacecraft and how to do spacewalks. But our training really is, a good deal of our training is focused on using this incredible laboratory we have in orbit now. So a lot of the science and research, how to conduct that research on the space station. Of course, in the early days, we were just learning to figure out if you could survive in space and do work in space and then go off to do that work. So Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, Skylab, those were trailblazers that really figured out if we could go, and then went on to do amazing things like land on the moon and do our first long duration missions. And a lot of that history is here in the Air and Space Museum.
All right, we've got an audience question next.
Hi, I'm Michaela, and were there any people who made fun of you or did not support your decision to become an astronaut?
Well, there were definitely people that made fun of me, but no, I would say for the most part, anyone who I shared this dream with, this goal, were incredibly supportive. Coaches, mentors, teachers, my parents were very supportive of this dream, although some, in retrospect, have admitted to me that while they were supportive, they recognized that that was a steep mountain to climb, but I'm very grateful for their support and their investment and walking alongside me as I pursued this opportunity. And so it's been fun to get to share the experience with them.
We've got an online question next. What should you study to become an astronaut or work at NASA? Because you're a doctor.
That's right. And one of the amazing things is that when you look at our astronaut office, there's not just one type of astronaut. We have pilots, navigators, we have scientists and researchers, engineers, and even medical doctors. And so there's no one thing to study, and my advice has always been to study what it is that you're passionate about, what you're interested in, because that's where you're going to do well. That you shouldn't study something because somebody else wants you to study that, or you think somebody wants you to study that. You're going to be miserable if you're spending your life doing something that you're not particularly interested in. So if you pursue your passion, you study what you're interested in, you're going to excel, you're going to rise to the top of your group, and that's where we choose our astronauts, are the best and brightest from each of those fields.
Awesome. Well, I got a chance to talk to one of your fellow astronauts and see about her experiences during astronaut training. Check it out. I'm joined by Christina Cook, NASA astronaut, class of 2013. You graduated from that class in 2015. Thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, what's the training like once you're selected to be an astronaut?
Well, it's more rigorous than even I could have imagined, because they take, the whole class, in my situation, 8 people, different backgrounds, and make us all into the type of person that can be responsible for the International Space Station or eventually a mission to Mars. So one of the first things they do for those of us that didn't have an aviation background is we get to learn how to fly high performance jets. For me, that meant going to a flight school, a military flight school, for a couple of months, and then coming back to NASA and learning how to fly our supersonic jets, which are the T-38. And the reason astronauts fly them is what we call space flight readiness training. And the idea is to take people like me that are engineers and scientists, we're used to solving tough problems locked up in our labs or computer rooms, and making us able to handle multiple inputs at a given time and do multiple things and multitask to solve real problems in situations that are critical. So after that sort of training was done for myself, I moved on to learning about space station systems, all the life support systems, the power systems, the thermal systems, command and data handling systems, communication systems, basically all the things that make this awesome spacecraft that we call a space station. All the while, we're learning how to speak Russian, because obviously we're sharing the space station with Russians right now, and we're launching from the Russian space station on the Russian rockets right now. So the international aspect of the program is really exciting, and that's one thing we had to train for. We also learned robotics, so we learned how to operate the robotic arm on space station. That's used to capture our cargo vehicles, and it's also used to assist in spacewalks. Sometimes there's actually an astronaut on the end of that robotic arm to reach certain spots on station. So that was an exciting part, and then all kinds of other training. We learn about the science on board. We learn about teamwork and what we call at NASA expeditionary behavior, trying to learn how to work well in a group of people and to be efficient and to get the mission done and to make sure that all the interpersonal stuff is feeding into that and benefiting that mission.
Marty, how are our friends doing with that Breakout EDU activity?
I don't know, Beth, how are they doing?
Well, let me show you guys. We've got 1, 2, 3 logs done. We've got one more. I think they're going to get into the box by the end of the show.
Keep working on that, guys. So, Chell, let's talk about that third phase of training. So now you've gotten assigned to a mission. What happens?
Well, you know, one of those other milestone events is getting that assignment. And so being assigned to a mission, that's super exciting. And then you basically start over a little bit, going back to all of those training activities that you started out as an astronaut candidate, but now you're practicing those activities with your mission in mind and all the specific things you're going to be doing during that mission. Maybe the spacewalk training on a particular piece of equipment. And then the other thing that we do, really spend time with the research, the payloads that we're going to be working with on the space station.
Now, Chell, we've brought up a couple of friends here, and we've got a very simple experiment that they're doing. And this is something, teachers, you can do in your classrooms called Cartesian divers. And it's just a bottle of water with a ketchup packet in it. And when they squeeze the bottle, that ketchup packet drops, and when they let go, it comes back up. And what's going on is you've got a little air bubble in that ketchup packet, and as you squeeze the bottle, it increases the pressure inside, makes that bubble get a little bit smaller, and causes the density of the packet to get higher and drop. And then when you let go, the opposite happens and it comes up. Chell, this is kind of like what you do in the neutral buoyancy lab, except that you're the ketchup packet.
Yeah, that's right. And it's been a while since I've been compared to a ketchup packet, but it's absolutely true. And you can see as the ketchup packet is dropping in these in Cartesian divers, what we're trying to do in the pool is actually to trap that ketchup packet so it is suspended midway and it just hangs out there. And so that then the ketchup packet is neutrally buoyant. And that is wherever we put the astronaut, that they just float there. And instead of doing it with increasing pressure, we change the average density of the astronaut using floats and weights. And so we have an amazing team of divers that are moving floats and weights all over the spacesuit so that when they let go of the astronaut, they'll just float there. And so the idea is that we get used to the sensation as we're moving around on the space station. If we were to let go, we would just float there. We can turn our bodies and we let go, we would just float there. And that prepares us for how we're going to move and work in space.
But when you're doing the training, the suit floats, but you don't, do you?
That's right. So as I'm upright in the suit, gravity is still pulling me down to the bottom of the suit. And if I were to flip upside down with my head down, now I'm going to fall into the top of the suit and the blood is rushing to my head, and then that gets to be very uncomfortable. And the great thing in space is that if you're working on something and you could get a better body position by flipping your body around 180 degrees, you're not falling anywhere. You're staying you're floating within your suit that is also floating.
Awesome. Well, Beth got an opportunity to learn more about the Neutral Buoyancy Lab in Houston, Texas. Check it out.
I'm in the Neutral Buoyancy Lab at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, and I'm joined by Travis Fitzgerald, who is the Chief Training Officer here. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Happy to be here.
What is this? It looks like a great big pool, Travis. What's going on here?
That's actually exactly what it is. It's a great big pool that we use to train the astronauts on how to do spacewalks. We'll actually put them inside spacesuits and put them down in the water, and the benefit of the water is it gives them the ability to be neutrally buoyant, hence the name of the building, and allow them to kind of practice what it's like actually being in space and in a microgravity environment.
Do you want to tell us what neutral buoyancy is? It's not just floating.
Right. So, well, neutral buoyancy in terms of the water is that you're at a point where you don't float and you don't sink.
Okay.
So you stay exactly where you are, and that kind of replicates what it's like in microgravity when you're outside on the space station. That's the best way we have, 6-hour run in the spacesuits to get practice handling the equipment and actually doing the maintenance that's required during a spacewalk.
Now, this isn't an empty pool. It's full of
Yes.
stuff.
Yes, there's a lot of hardware in here. Basically, it's replicating what the space station is really like in terms of size. It's the exact size of the space station. In fact, it's so big that it doesn't all fit in here, so we've had to move things around a little bit so that it actually fits. But it also gives a chance for the crew members to practice moving on the outside, because they've got to move from the airlock, find a good path so they don't get tangled up in wires or go on points that are sharp or anything like that, and get to where they're going so they can actually do their work.
And the astronauts aren't alone in the pool.
Right. So we've got the 2 astronauts in the pool in suits, and then they've got a whole host of divers down there with them, just in your normal scuba gear, that are watching them, making sure they're safe, that are carrying their tools around and handing them tools when they need it.
How long are they in the pool typically during the day?
Typically 5 to 6 hours is how long they're actually in the pool. The best part about this is it gets them practice being in the suit and actually having to move around, and it's fairly uncomfortable being in the suit, so they have to get used to that so that they're not, getting pinch points and being uncomfortable in the suit when they're out in space. And because the last thing we want to do is have to end something early because of problems. So we try and do as much as we can here to make sure that they're comfortable with what they're doing.
Thank you so much for joining us today. This was really fascinating.
Well, I'm happy to be here.
Well, we got all 4 locks off. Was this fun?
Yes, it
was. Did you guys have to work with a team?
Yeah.
And what was the best part for you?
Working together.
Working together, that's great. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna open the box. Go ahead and someone unzip the box and let's see what's inside. Okay. Well, show them your prizes. What prizes did you win here? All right. Well, this group is a little excited about their NASA pins and patches. Let's go back to Marty and Chell.
Nice job, guys. Way to get into the box and use teamwork to do that. Now, Chell, you had a couple of friends come back from the International Space Station last night, right?
That's right, and we're so excited to have them back. So they are on their way flying back from Kazakhstan right now, Joe Akaba and Mark Vande Hei. They did an amazing job on the space station, and we're excited. I know their family's excited to have them home, and we're excited to hear about their experiences.
What is that ride like coming back in a Soyuz?
I talked with Scott Kelly a little bit about this before my return home. He had previously come home on the space shuttle and on a Soyuz, and he said, and I agree with him, that even if you didn't like being in space, that ride home is worth it, because it is like the craziest amusement park ride you can imagine. So coming down through the atmosphere, and the friction and the heat is so intense that we essentially are surrounded in a fireball. So I look out the window and I can see this plasma, these flames just inches from my head. And then the drogue chute comes out, and it's like being at the end of a whip. You're just being flung around, and it feels like you're flipping. And then the big chute comes out. It's an incredible ride, and it means that you're just about home.
Awesome. Well, you ready to take a few more questions?
Absolutely.
All right, let's start with an audience question.
Does it feel like you're going to fall during a spacewalk?
Wow, does it feel like you're going to fall during a spacewalk? There are some books out there that have astronaut accounts of doing spacewalks, and I know that there have been some folks that as they've gone outside, they felt like if they let go, that they would fall back to the Earth, and you can imagine that is probably pretty terrifying. For myself, I never felt like I was going to fall, but with the Earth just spinning rapidly below and not really having anything underneath my feet, I definitely wanted to keep a firm grip on the space station.
All right, we've got a video question next.
Hi, I'm Sarah, and I was wondering, do you practice how to eat in space?
Oh, that's a really good question. We talked about food a little bit before, and we have an opportunity to go to the NASA Space Food Laboratory and try food before we go, just to kind of identify what some of our favorites in the menu were. So we get to practice making the food and tasting it, but we really don't get to practice how to eat food in space. And so there's a lot of, we make a mess initially because there's some fine techniques that you've got to learn. I have several shirts that I nuked with with soup and coffee. I added my share of coffee to the walls of the galley, but over time you figure it out because you don't want to lose that food and you don't want to make a mess.
All right, we've got an online question next. Can a child go into space?
Can a child go into space? Well, the answer is absolutely yes. We could put a child in a rocket and send them to space. And I'm so excited because we are really on the cusp of a new era of space exploration with these commercial companies that are developing vehicles to take paying customers into space. And I think that the opportunity will exist someday in the not too distant future for a child to fly. But right now, and even into the future, flying in space is dangerous. And it requires a significant amount of training and hard work to be prepared to deal with emergencies. And so we will, at this point, not put children on a spacecraft, but once we get to a point where we have made it as safe as possible, I imagine that in the future that children will have the opportunity to fly. And I'm excited about that because the idea of a child getting to experience weightlessness and then also to see our home planet, the Earth, from that perspective is a valuable one and I think exciting for a child to experience.
All right, we've got an audience question next.
When did you know that you wanted to pursue a job in the medical field?
Well, I wanted to be an astronaut for as long as I can remember, but I knew that the odds of doing that were very, very difficult. And so I had to find something else that I was passionate about doing. And so I've always had a desire to serve the community and also to challenge myself. And medicine represented a real unique cross-section opportunity to be able to do that. To challenge myself to work in the medical field as a doctor, and then also to have developed the skills to be able to serve the community.
Awesome. Well, Chell, we're just about out of time.
All
We want to remind everybody to tune in next month when we look at the science of safety.
Hi, I'm Beth Wilson from the National Air and Space Museum, and check this out. Behind me is U.S. Airways Flight 1549. On January 15th, 2009, this plane took off from LaGuardia Airport. It hit a flock of geese and had to make an emergency landing in the Hudson River. All 155 people on board survived with very few serious injuries. Was it just dumb luck? Or is there science to safety? If you want to find out the answer to this question, be sure to watch STEM in 30.
We'd like to thank Chell Lindgren for joining us today, as well as our sponsor, the Gertrude E. Skelly Charitable Foundation.
And we also want to thank Ripon Middle School for coming. You guys were great.
We leave you today with some video of astronauts in training.
Thanks for watching.
Spasibo.
Is that Russian?
Yep.